Grant always told our parents that my ambition was adorable but fragile, nothing like the terrifying brilliance of his fiancée. Mara wins National Journalism Awards while I just manage spreadsheets, but when I logged into the video call for the distinction that could finally save my company, it was Mara waiting on the screen. She did not ask about my revenue. She smiled like a hunter and asked about the one secret I thought I had buried 7 years ago. The notification from Boreal Business Review arrived on my phone at 6 in the morning, vibrating against the nightstand like a trapped insect. I woke up instantly, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. In the dim light of my bedroom, the screen glowed with the subject line that I had been dreading and craving in equal measure. Finalist selection. Boreal 30 under. I sat up, pulling the duvet tight around my chest. This was it. The list was a franchise, a spin-off of the major 40 under 40 power lists. But in my industry, it was the gold standard. Making the cut meant immediate validation. It meant that Crown and Alder Ventures would stop looking at my operational efficiency consultancy as a boutique risk and start seeing us as a scalable necessity. It meant the partnership with LumenMart, a deal that could triple our revenue by the fourth quarter. Would likely move from a tentative handshake to a signed contract, but mostly, it meant that for the first time in my 33 years of life, I would have a piece of paper that proved I was not just Grant James's little sister who was playing pretend. I got out of bed and walked to the window of my apartment. The city of Havenport was waking up below me, gray and steel blue in the early dawn. I ran a company that employed 22 people. We used artificial intelligence to optimize supply chains for mid-market logistics firms. Last year, we saved our clients a collective $12 million in wasted overhead. I was good at this. I knew I was good at this. Yet, as I stared at the city, the old familiar voice in the back of my head whispered that I was a fraud. It was a voice that sounded remarkably like my brother. The week ahead was a minefield. I had the final pitch to Crown and Alder on Thursday. The LumenMart contracts were sitting in legal review. And now, I had to prepare for the final interview for the Boreal list. The email stated that the interviewer's identity would remain confidential until the video call began to prevent lobbying or bias. It was a standard procedure for this specific award, but it made my stomach turn. I needed to control the variables. I lived my life by controlling variables. I showered, dressed in my armor, a charcoal blazer and tailored trousers, and drove to the office. The silence of the car gave me too much time to think about dinner. My parents had insisted on a family dinner tonight. Just a casual Tuesday night meal, my mother had said, her voice bright and brittle over the phone. Grant would be there. Mara would be there. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Grant and Mara, the golden couple of Havenport. Grant was 3 years older than me, a consultant at Vanguard Thread Partners. He was tall, charming in a way that felt curated, and entirely convinced of his own mythology. And then there was Mara Voss, the fiancée, the Pulitzer Prize winner, the investigative journalist whose recent series on municipal corruption had made her a household name across the state. They were perfect. They were terrifying. And I was the audience they required to validate their performance. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, the air inside smelled of roasted garlic and expensive red wine. My mother, Diane, was in the kitchen, fussing over a salad that already looked perfect. My father, Robert, was in the living room, listening to Grant recount a story about a client who had tried to underpay him, Ariana. Grant said, not bothering to stand up as I walked in, "You look tired. Is the little startup keeping you up past your bedtime?" I forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach my eyes. "Hello, Grant. It is good to see you too, and it is not a startup anymore. We have been profitable for 3 years. Grant waved a hand, dismissing my correction like a gnat. You know what I mean? Operations, spreadsheets and vibes. It is cute. I felt the familiar heat rise in my neck, a mixture of shame and anger that I had been swallowing since I was 6 years old. It is not vibes. Grant, we are restructuring the inventory flow for a regional shipping conglomerate. Grant laughed. A short, sharp bark. Shipping? Glamorous. Mara walked in from the patio then. She was wearing a simple silk blouse that probably cost more than my first car. Her dark hair was pulled back, exposing a face that was striking not because it was pretty, though it was, but because it was intense. Mara looked at everything like she was trying to find the crack in the surface. "Hi, Ariana," she said. Her voice was cool. "Smooth water. Grant tells me you are up for some award?" "The Boreal 30 Under," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I am a finalist." Grant snorted into his wine glass. "The 30 Under. Is that the one where you pay the entry fee and they give you a plaque?" "It is merit-based." "Grant," I said, my voice hardening. "The acceptance rate is lower than Harvard." Grant turned to Mara, grinning. "You see what I mean? She is so intense about it. Meanwhile, you have a Pulitzer sitting on the mantel, and you barely mention it." Mara took a sip of her wine, her eyes fixed on me. "Awards are useful tools," she said enigmatically. "Good luck, Ariana." Dinner was an exercise in endurance. My mother guided the conversation towards safe topics: the weather, the neighbors, the upcoming remodel of the kitchen, but Grant kept steering it back to the gap between us. He treated the dinner table like a courtroom where he was both the prosecutor and the judge. "So, Mara," Grant said, cutting into his steak, "tell them about the offer from the network." Mara hesitated, glancing at me. "It is just a discussion." "Grant?" "No, tell them," Grant insisted. "They want her to anchor a primetime investigative hour. National distribution." He looked at me, his eyes gleaming. "Imagine that. Real impact. Not just moving boxes around in a database. That is incredible." "Mara," I said, and I meant it. I respected her work. She was brilliant. It was just unfortunate that her brilliance was the weapon Grant used to bludgeon me. Grant reached out and squeezed Mara's hand. "I just need someone accomplished. You know? It is stimulating. I do not think I could be with someone who did not challenge me intellectually." He paused, then looked at me with mock sympathy. "You should try to find someone accomplished too. Ari, maybe it would help you level up." Robert cleared his throat. "Grant, let's not tease your sister. She works very hard." "She does." Diane added quickly, "You are so resilient. Ariana, we are always so proud of how you just keep going." That was the pattern. Grant was the genius who needed to be managed because he was sensitive. I was the mule who was expected to carry the load because I was resilient. I kept going because I have to. I said, setting my fork down, "Someone has to actually work while you are busy admiring your own reflection." "Grant." The table went silent. Grant's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. "Touchy," he said softly. "I was just joking. You are so easy to rattle. Ariana, that is probably why the investors are hesitant. They can smell the insecurity." I did not have a retort. I just picked up my wine glass and took a long drink, letting the expensive vintage wash away the taste of ash in my mouth. The next morning, the office felt like a sanctuary, the hum of the servers, the quiet murmur of my team discussing code, the smell of industrial coffee. It grounded me. Tessa Linford, my chief operating officer, walked into my office and closed the door. She did not sit down. Tessa was 40, sharp-featured, and had spent 10 years in crisis management before coming to work for me. She did not panic, so the look on her face made my blood run cold. "What is it?" I asked. "We have a problem with the reference checks." Tessa said, "The Boreal checks?" "No, not official ones." Tessa pulled a tablet out and placed it on my desk. "I have a friend in HR at 3 of our past client companies. They pinged me this morning. Someone has been calling around, not asking about our performance metrics. They are asking about you, personally." "What kind of questions?" I asked, leaning forward. Tessa swiped the screen. "Questions about ethical lapses. Questions about whether you ever pressured anyone to overlook protocol. Questions about the culture of compliance under your leadership." I stared at the tablet. "Who is asking?" "That is the weird part," Tessa said. "They are not identifying themselves as journalists or investors. They are using a generic corporate inquiry service, but the questions are specific. Too specific. They are looking for something particular. Ariana, My mind flashed back 7 years. I was 26, working as a junior associate at Brightwell Strategy Group. We were handling a restructuring for a mid-sized manufacturing firm that was bleeding cash. The mandate was to cut costs by 30%. The model said we had to fire 400 people. I had found a loophole, a way to reclassify certain assets to free up liquidity without triggering a debt covenant breach. It was creative. It saved the jobs, but to make it work, I had to bypass a secondary compliance review. I had signed a document I shouldn't have signed. I had overridden a flag in the system. Technically, it was fraud. Morally, it was a rescue. Practically, it was a secret I had never told a living soul. "Is there anything I need to know?" Tessa asked, her voice low. "No," I lied. My voice was steady. "It is probably just a competitor trying to stir up mud before the boreal list comes out. You know how this industry is." Tessa looked at me for a long moment. She knew I was holding back, but she also knew when to stop pushing. "Okay, I will monitor it. But Ariana, if there is a skeleton, bury it deeper, because someone has a shovel." I spent the rest of the day in a fog of anxiety. Every email notification made me jump. Every time my phone rang, I expected it to be the police, or a regulator, or Grant laughing at me. Grant? I checked my personal email. There was an invite from him. Subject: engagement celebration, small, Saturday night, the Azure Room. Just drinks and close friends. I want to celebrate Mara's news and my promotion. You have to come. Do not be antisocial. I wanted to decline. I wanted to crawl into a hole and stay there until the boreal list came out. But skipping it would look weak. It would look like he had won. I accepted the invite. Saturday night arrived with a humidity that made the air feel heavy. The Azure Room was one of those rooftop bars where the cocktails cost $25 and the view was calibrated for social media. Grant was holding court near the railing. A glass of scotch in one hand, his other arm draped possessively around Mara's waist. He was surrounded by a cluster of people I recognized vaguely: journalists, local power players, friends of Mara. I took a breath and walked over. "Ariana!" Grant shouted. Spotting me, he waved me over like he was summoning a waiter. "Everyone, this is my little sister." "Hello, Grant," I said, stepping into the circle. "Hi, Mara." Mara nodded at me. She looked tired again, her eyes scanning the crowd like she was looking for an exit. "Ariana is up for a little award," Grant announced to the group. "The boreal thing. You know, the 30 under whatever. That is great." A woman with bright red glasses said, "Congratulations." Grant laughed. "Yeah, she is trying. She has got this little company, Operations Consulting. It is very diligent." He turned to me, his smile tight. "I was telling everyone how you used to organize your toys by color when you were 5. You have always been obsessed with control, haven't you?" I felt the heat rising again. "Grant, please. She is cute, isn't she?" Grant said, squeezing Mara's shoulder. "She tries so hard. It is really inspiring. Not everyone can be a genius, right? Some people just have to be the worker bees." The group laughed politely. It was a joke. It was just a brother teasing his sister. But I saw the way Mara stiffened. I saw the way she pulled slightly away from him. "You know, Grant," Mara said, her voice cutting through the laughter, "organizing chaos is a talent. Without operations, the rest of us are just shouting into the void." Grant looked down at her, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face before he smoothed it over. "Of course, babe, I am just saying, we are proud of her for trying." I excused myself and went to the bar. My hands were shaking. I ordered a sparkling water and gripped the cold glass. He did not just want to be better than me. He needed me to be small so he could feel tall. I looked back at the group. Grant was whispering something to a man in a navy suit, gesturing toward me. The man looked at me, then laughed. I left 20 minutes later. I did not say goodbye. Sunday was a blur of preparation. I reviewed my pitch deck for Crown and Alder. I went over the financials for Lumenmart. But my mind kept drifting to the interview on Monday morning. The boreal interview. The final hurdle. I barely slept. I woke up at 5. paced my living room, drank 3 cups of coffee, and finally sat down at my desk at 8. The interview was scheduled for 9 o'clock. I checked my lighting, I checked my background, a bookshelf, carefully curated with biographies and industry manuals. I checked my microphone. At 8:55, I logged into the secure meeting link provided by the Boreal Committee. The screen was black. A message in white text read, "Waiting for host to join." I took deep breaths. In, out. I am a finalist. I earned this. My revenue is real. My technology is real. At 9 o'clock exactly. The screen flickered. The video feed connected. I froze. Sitting on the other side of the screen, framed by a generic office background, was Mara Voss. She was wearing a cream-colored blazer, her hair pulled back in that severe, elegant style. She was looking directly at the camera. She was not smiling. "Mara?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Hello?" "Ariana," she said. Her voice was professional, stripped of the warmth she had shown at the dinner, stripped of the fatigue she had shown at the bar. It was the voice of a broadcaster. You are the interviewer?" I asked. Boreal outsources the final vetting round to independent journalists to ensure objectivity. Mara said, "I was assigned your file this morning." "This morning?" I repeated. "But isn't this a conflict of interest?" "You are marrying my brother." I disclosed the connection. Mara said calmly, "The editorial board decided that since our finances are not commingled and we are not legally family yet, my expertise in the Havenport business sector outweighs the potential bias. They asked if I could be objective. I told them I could." I stared at her. This felt like a trap. A trap set by Grant? Or was this Mara? "Shall we begin?" she asked. "We have 45 minutes. I nodded, unable to speak. Mara looked down at her notes, then back at me. "First, I want to say that the growth metrics for your consultancy are impressive. Quiet power is often the most effective kind. You have built something sustainable in a market prone to volatility." "Thank you," I stammered. She leaned forward slightly. The camera zoomed in on her face. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unreadable. "However," Mara continued, her tone shifting, it became surgical, precise, to be on the 30 under list. "We need to understand the foundational decisions of the nominee, the moments where character was tested." I swallowed. "I have been reviewing your client history," Mara said. "You list almost every engagement since your founding. Harborline Logistics, the restructuring at Greenview, but there is a gap in your personal resume, right before you launched your own firm." My heart stopped. "When you were at Brightwell Strategy Group," she said, referencing the name of my old employer, "you were the lead associate on the Briar Vale Credit Union account." She paused. "You did not list Briar Vale on your application." "Ariana, why is that?" The room seemed to tilt. Briar Vale. That was the client. That was the shortcut. That was the secret. I was a junior associate. I managed. It was not my account to claim." Mara didn't blink. "But you were the one who signed the asset reclassification documents, weren't you? The ones that allowed them to pass the solvency audit 3 weeks before they were acquired?" Silence stretched between us. It wasn't just a question. It was an accusation wrapped in a journalist's inquiry. She knew. She knew about the signature. She knew about the gray area. "How do you know that?" I whispered. "That is internal data." "I do my research," Mara said. "And I am asking you, for the record, did you prioritize the immediate survival of the client over the procedural compliance requirements?" My mind raced. If I admitted it, I was unethical. If I lied, and she had proof, I was finished. Grant. This had to be Grant. He had told her. He had dug it up. He was using her to destroy me on the very platform I needed to escape him, or... I looked at Mara's face. There was no triumph there. There was no smirk. There was only a cold, hard curiosity. She wasn't looking at me like a sister-in-law. She was looking at me like a puzzle she was trying to solve. I sat up straighter. The fear that had been gripping me all week suddenly crystallized into something else. Anger. Pure, cold anger. I was not going to let them do this. I was not going to be the little sister who cried and folded. I looked directly into the camera lens. That situation was complex. "Mara," I said, my voice gaining strength. "And if we are going to discuss the realities of that audit, we need to talk about the context. We need to talk about who actually benefited from that acquisition." Mara's eyebrows lifted, just a fraction of an inch. "Go on," she said. I realized then that this interview wasn't about a list anymore. It was the opening move of a chess game I hadn't realized I was playing, and I was done being a pawn. I took a breath. "Let me explain exactly what happened at Briarvale," I said, and for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to please the people across the table and started playing to win. The call ended 10 minutes later. I sat in the silence of my office, my skin buzzing. I didn't know if I had passed the interview. I didn't know if I had just confessed to a career-ending crime or spun it into a story of leadership. But I knew one thing: Mara Voss wasn't just a journalist, and she wasn't just Grant's fiancée. She was hunting, and she had just shown me her teeth. I stood up and walked to the window. Below me, the city continued its morning rhythm. "I am not a prop," I said to the empty room. I pulled out my phone and dialed Tessa. "Tessa," I said when she answered, "stop looking for who is asking questions. I know who it is. I need you to find out everything you can about Mara Voss's early career. Specifically, her connection to the North Pine Community Foundation." "Why?" Tessa asked. "Because," I said, watching a hawk circle the thermal currents above the city, "I think my brother's fiancée just gave me a warning, and I need to know if she is trying to kill me, or if she is trying to save me." The cancellation email from Crown and Alder Ventures arrived on Tuesday afternoon, sliding into my inbox with the silence of a closing door. I had been waiting for their term sheet for 3 weeks. Instead, I received 3 sentences from the junior partner I had been courting. "Dear Ariana, due to an internal conflict check that was flagged late in our diligence process, we are pausing all discussions regarding the Series B round. We wish you the best with your future endeavors. Regards, Kevin." I stared at the screen. A conflict check, in the venture capital world. That phrase was the polite way of saying we found something we do not like, and we are not going to tell you what it is. My office suddenly felt too large. The glass walls, which usually made me feel connected to my team, now made me feel exposed. I looked out at the bullpen. 22 people were working, typing, drinking coffee, trusting that I had secured the capital to keep their paychecks clearing for the next 18 months. Tessa walked in a moment later. She did not knock. She held a printout of the email. "This is nonsense," Tessa said, her voice low. "We cleared their initial screen 2 months ago. You do not fail a conflict check at the term sheet stage unless something new appears in the file." I leaned back in my chair, pressing my fingers against my temples, or unless someone made a phone call. Tessa sat down, her face grim. "You think this is related to the reference checks? I think the timing is too precise to be an accident." I said, "Crown and Alder is conservative. They do not like noise. If someone whispered that I'm a liability, they would not investigate. They would just walk away. It is easier to find another company to invest in than to untangle a founder's reputation." "Is it Grant?" Tessa asked. I hesitated. Accusing my brother of sabotaging a $5 million investment round sounded paranoid. It sounded like the kind of hysterical, emotional reaction Grant liked to accuse me of having. But I knew him. I knew how he operated. He did not attack frontally. He removed the floorboards one by one until you fell through, and then he would be the first one there to offer you a hand up, asking why you were so clumsy. "I do not know." I said, "But I have a follow-up interview with Mara this afternoon. She said she needs verification on some details." Tessa frowned. "Verification? That is usually a 5-minute email. Why does she need another video call?" "Because she is not verifying facts." "Tessa," I said, looking at the black screen of my laptop, "she is building a profile, and I need to figure out if she is writing a biography or an obituary." The second interview with Mara began at 2 o'clock. She looked different this time, less severe. She was wearing a softer blue blouse, and the lighting in her home office was warmer. It was designed to make me lower my guard. "Hello, Ariana," she said. "Thank you for making the time. The editorial board is very excited about your candidacy." I folded my hands on the desk, keeping them out of the frame so she would not see the tension in my knuckles. "I am happy to help." "Mara, what do you need to clarify?" "Just some color," she said breezily. "We have the numbers. We have the revenue growth. But the readers want to know the philosophy behind the founder." She glanced at her notes. "You mentioned in our last conversation that the situation at Briar Vale was complex," she said. "That struck me. You built your company on the idea of optimization, efficiency, rules." "Yes," I said cautiously. "But in your personal history, there seems to be a tension between the rules and the outcome," Mara said. She looked up, her eyes locking onto mine through the camera. "When did you first realize that results mattered more than rules?" The question hung in the air. It was a trap. If I said I valued results over rules, I sounded reckless. If I said I valued rules over results, I sounded like a bureaucrat who would let a company fail rather than bend a regulation. "It is not about choosing one over the other," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It is about understanding the intent of the rule. Rules are designed to protect the system, but sometimes, blind adherence to a rule destroys the very system it was meant to protect." Mara nodded slowly, as if she were agreeing. But I saw her typing. "So, would you say that you are comfortable operating in the gray areas?" she asked. "If the end justifies the means?" I felt a flash of cold sweat. She was trying to get me to rationalize the Briar Vale decision on tape. "I am comfortable making difficult decisions," I said. "That is what a CEO does." Mara stopped typing. She looked at me for a long moment. "Interesting. Grant always says you are very black and white. He says you get anxious when things are not perfectly ordered." I stiffened. "Grant discusses my management style with you?" "He discusses his family," Mara said. "He is very protective of you." "Ariana, he worries that the pressure of this industry might be too much for you. He mentioned that you used to have panic attacks in college." I felt the blood drain from my face. That was private. That was something I had told Grant in confidence 10 years ago. After a breakup that had shattered me, "I do not have panic attacks," I said, my voice icy, "and I would appreciate it if we kept this interview focused on my professional achievements, not my brother's amateur psychoanalysis." Mara smiled, a small, tight expression. "Of course, just checking the background." When the call ended, I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. My hands were shaking. He was feeding her ammunition. He was painting a portrait of me as unstable, fragile, a girl who needed protecting. And Mara was taking that paint and putting it on the canvas of the Boreal Business Review. Tessa found me in the break room 20 minutes later. I was staring at the coffee machine, watching the dark liquid drip into the pot. "He is doing it," I said. "Grant?" Tessa asked. "He is telling her I am unstable," I said. "He is telling her I cannot handle pressure. He is setting the narrative so that if I fail, or if the article is negative, everyone will nod and say, 'Well, we knew she was fragile.'" Tessa leaned against the counter. She had never met Grant, but she knew him through the scars he had left on my confidence. "You have told me stories," Tessa said, "but I never really understood why. You are successful. You are self-made. Why does he care so much?" I turned to look at her. "Because Grant is a mirror. Tessa, he does not have his own light. He shines by reflecting the people around him. If he stands next to a failure, he looks like a savior. If he stands next to a success, he looks like a peer. But if I am successful on my own, without his help, without his permission, then I am not a prop anymore. I am competition." "Competition for what?" Tessa asked. "For the only thing that matters to him," I said. "Dominance." The engagement party was held at the James family home on Friday night. My parents had hired a caterer, and the house was filled with fresh flowers and people who mattered in Havenport. I wore a dress that I knew was too bold, a sharp, architectural red piece that stood out against the beige and cream tones my mother preferred. I wanted to be seen, I wanted Grant to look at me and know that I knew. Grant was in the living room, holding court. He was wearing a velvet blazer, looking every inch the successful consultant. Mara was next to him, wearing white. She looked beautiful, but there was a stiffness in her posture that I recognized. "Ariana!" Grant called out when he saw me. He walked over, arms open, performing the role of the loving brother for the audience. "You made it. I was worried you would be working late. You know how you get." I let him hug me. His cologne was expensive and overpowering. I always make time for family. "Grant," I said, stepping back. "Congratulations." Grant beamed, turning to the group around us. "Isn't she great? My baby sister. She is up for this big award." We are all holding our breath, hoping she pulls it off, as if it were a magic trick I was likely to botch. Mara was watching us. She was holding a glass of champagne that she hadn't touched. Someone from the group, a man I recognized as a partner at Grant's firm, laughed. "Well, Grant, with you marrying a Pulitzer winner, the pressure is on the whole family. You are collecting high achievers like baseball cards." Grant laughed, pulling Mara closer. He kissed her temple. "I just like surrounding myself with the best. It rubs off, right? If you want to be a king, you have to build a court." It was a joke. Everyone laughed, but I saw Mara flinch. It was subtle, a tightening of her jaw, a quick blink, but it was there. The partner laughed again. "Just make sure you do not use them all up. Grant, people are not renewable resources." Grant's smile didn't waver. "That is why you have to keep finding new ones." "Dave," the laughter continued. But the air around Mara seemed to drop 10 degrees. She extricated herself from Grant's grip with a smooth, practiced movement. "I'm going to get a refill," she said quietly. I waited a moment, then followed her to the kitchen. It was empty, save for a catering staff member who was arranging tartlets on a tray. Mara was standing by the sink, staring out the window into the dark backyard. "You do not look like a happy bride," I said. Mara turned. Her face was composed, but her eyes were tired. "Weddings are stressful. Ariana, you know that. I do not know that." "Actually," I said, "I have never been married. Grant usually tells people that is because I am too intimidated by intimacy." Mara let out a short, dry sound that might have been a laugh. "He tells people a lot of things." I walked over to the island, leaning against the marble counter. "Why did you ask me about the rules, Mara? In the interview, why are you digging into Briar Vale?" Mara looked at me. She put her glass down. "Because I am trying to understand the ecosystem," she said. "What ecosystem?" "The one we are both swimming in," she said. She took a step closer to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You think Grant is just a vain, competitive brother. You think he is annoying. He is dangerous," I said. Mara nodded slowly. "Yes, he is. But you do not understand the scale." "What does that mean?" I asked. Mara looked back toward the living room, checking to see if we were alone. "Grant does not love people, Ariana. He loves what they give him. He loves the reflection. I am the journalist of the year, so I make him look smart. You are the struggling startup founder, so you make him look stable." "I am not struggling," I said. "I know," Mara said, "and that is the problem. You are growing out of your role. You are becoming a person he cannot control. And when Grant cannot control a reflection, he breaks the mirror." I stared at her. "Why are you marrying him?" Mara's expression closed off. "That is complicated." She started to walk away, then stopped in the doorway. "How far do you think he will go to keep you small, Ariana?" she asked. "Because I think you are underestimating the blast radius." I left the party 20 minutes later. I drove home with the radio off, the silence of the car amplifying the sound of Mara's question. How far will he go? When I got to my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my sofa. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. No words, just a link. I hesitated. My security protocols told me not to click it, but my gut told me this was the other shoe dropping. I opened my laptop and typed the link into a secure browser sandbox. It was a file download, a zipped folder. I opened it. The folder contained 12 PDF documents. They were emails, internal emails from Brightwell Strategy Group, dated 7 years ago. I felt the blood rush in my ears. The top email was a thread between me and the senior partner at Brightwell. From Ariana James. To Marcus Thorne. Subject: R.E. Briar Vale Compliance Review. Marcus: I have executed the asset reclassification as discussed. It will clear the liquidity hurdle for the audit. I am overriding the secondary compliance flag per your verbal instruction. Please confirm receipt. There was no reply from Marcus in the file. Just my email, my admission. If this leaked, I was dead. It was proof that I had knowingly bypassed a control. Without Marcus's reply confirming he ordered it, it looked like I had gone rogue. It looked like fraud. I called Tessa. It was 11 o'clock at night. I need you to come over. I said, now. Tessa arrived in 15 minutes, wearing sweatpants and a trench coat. She looked at the screen, and her face went pale. Who sent this? She asked. I do not know. I said, it came from a burner number. Tessa sat down and started typing. She was not a hacker, but she knew how to trace digital footprints better than anyone I knew. Let me see the headers, she muttered. She worked in silence for 10 minutes. I paced the room. If Grant has this, I said, if he gives this to the Boreal Committee, he does not even need to give it to them. Tessa said, not looking up. He just needs to leak it to a blog. Your investors will run. Lumenmart will void the contract. You will be toxic. Got it, Tessa said suddenly. What? The file hosting service? She said, it is a generic cloud drop. But the upload IP address was not masked properly. It routed through a guest network. Where? I asked. Tessa pointed at the screen. The IP block is registered to a nonprofit organization in downtown Havenport, the North Pine Community Foundation. I froze. North Pine. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. It was one of those ubiquitous names you saw on gala invitations and park benches. Why would someone at a community foundation have my old emails from Brightwell? I asked. Tessa shook her head. Maybe Grant knows someone there? Maybe he used their Wi-Fi? I grabbed my laptop and opened a new tab. I searched for North Pine Community Foundation. The website was polished, filled with photos of smiling children and diverse board members, empowering Havenport's future. I clicked on the About Us page. The founder was a man named Silas Greer. I searched for Silas Greer and Mara Voss. The search results populated instantly. The Visionary of Havenport. An exclusive interview with Silas Greer by Mara Voss, published 18 months ago. I clicked the article. It was a glowing profile. It painted Greer as a saint of modern philanthropy. It was well written, persuasive, and completely devoid of the sharp, critical edge Mara was famous for. I looked at the date. It was published 2 months before Mara launched her award-winning series on municipal corruption. The series that had been funded by a journalism grant, a grant from the North Pine Community Foundation. The pieces started to click together in my mind, forming a picture that made me nauseous. Mara writes a puff piece for Greer. Greer gives Mara a grant. Mara becomes a star. And now, an anonymous file containing my darkest professional secret is uploaded from Greer's building. Is Mara doing this? I asked, my voice trembling. Is she the one leaking it? Tessa looked at the screen. Why would she warn you if she was the one pulling the trigger? She asked you how far Grant would go. Maybe she sent this to show you. Or maybe she is playing both sides. I said, maybe she is gathering evidence for Grant. And she slipped up. I stood up. I need to talk to Elena. Elena Ward? Tessa asked. Your old mentor? She was the only other person on the Briar Vale team who had a conscience. I said, she left Brightwell a year after I did. If anyone knows how these emails survived, it is her. I met Elena Ward the next morning at a coffee shop on the edge of the city. Elena was 50, with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many corporate bodies buried. She looked at the printout of the email I slid across the table. She didn't look surprised. I thought they deleted these. I said, nothing is ever deleted. Ariana, Elena said, pushing the paper back to me. You know that. Brightwell archived everything on a redundancy server, just in case they needed leverage against former employees. Who has access? I asked. The partners, Elena said, and their legal counsel. I leaned forward. What about the North Pine Community Foundation? Is there a connection? Elena's eyes flickered. She looked around the coffee shop, checking the tables near us. North Pine is a client, she said softly. A client of Brightwell? A client of the firm that acquired Brightwell's distressed assets, Elena corrected. But it is deeper than that. Silas Greer used to be on the board of the bank that absorbed Briar Vale. I felt a chill run down my spine. The bank that absorbed Briar Vale. The bank that benefited from my decision to keep the credit union alive long enough to be bought. So North Pine is connected to the Briar Vale acquisition. I said. Elena nodded. And they are very protective of that history. There were irregularities. Not just your little compliance override. Bigger things. Money that moved when it shouldn't have. She leaned in, her voice a whisper. Ariana, if this email is surfacing now, it is not just about you. Someone is weaponizing your past to protect something else. Or to buy someone's silence. You mean Grant? I asked. Elena looked at me with pity. Your brother is a consultant. Ariana, his firm. Vanguard Thread. Does reputation management for North Pine. Did you know that? I stared at her. No, I did not. He cleans up messes. Elena said, and right now, it looks like he is using you as the mop. I drove back to the city in a daze. Grant worked for North Pine. Mara's career was funded by North Pine, and my secret was being held by North Pine. It wasn't just a sibling rivalry, it was a closed loop. Grant and Mara were part of a machine, and I was the glitch they were trying to patch. I had one more interview scheduled with Mara, the final sign-off. I logged on at 4 o'clock. Mara was there. Her face was impassive. We have what we need. Ariana, she said, the profile is drafted. Is it? I asked. Does it include the email from Brightwell? Mara didn't flinch. She didn't blink. I have seen a lot of documents in the last 48 hours, she said carefully. I know where it came from. Mara, I said, I know about North Pine. I know about Grant's contract. Mara went silent. She looked down at her hands, then back at the camera. If you are on the list? Ariana, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. You become a symbol. Symbols get audited. People look for cracks. And if they find one, they do not just patch it. They shatter the whole statue. Is that a threat? I asked. It is advice. Mara said, if you want to survive this week, stop trying to be on the list. Withdraw your nomination. Why? So Grant can win? So he can be the only success in the family? So you do not get destroyed, Mara said. The story is bigger than you think. Walk away. Ariana, before they make you the villain of a story, you did not even write. She ended the call. I sat in my office until the sun went down. Withdraw. That was the message. Go back to being small. Go back to being the little sister. I packed my bag and took the elevator down to the lobby. Grant was waiting for me. He was leaning against the security desk, chatting with the night guard. He looked perfectly at ease, handsome, successful, the good brother. Ariana, he said, smiling as I walked out of the turnstile. I was just in the neighborhood. I thought I would offer you a ride home. I stopped. I gripped the strap of my bag. I have a car. Grant, I know, he said, walking toward me. But you look tired. You look stressed. Mara told me the interview was intense. He stopped a foot away from me. He smelled of peppermint and confidence. I hope you are not going to embarrass the family. Ari, he said softly. His voice was sweet, dripping with fake concern. With all this weird business stuff, the compliance issues, the secrets, it would be a shame if Mom and Dad found out you were unethical. I looked at him. I saw the gleam in his eyes. He was enjoying this. He held the knife, and he was waiting for me to beg him not to cut. I am not withdrawing. Grant, I said, Grant sighed. He reached out and patted my shoulder. His hand felt heavy. Okay, Ari, but remember, I tried to protect you. I always try to protect you. He turned and walked out into the night, leaving me standing in the lobby, cold and trembling, with the realization that my brother wasn't just my rival, he was my executioner. The phone call that started the landslide came on a Wednesday morning, just as the city of Havenport was shaking off a gray drizzle. I was standing in my office, looking at the revenue projections for the third quarter, trying to convince myself that the numbers on the screen were a shield that could protect me. My assistant, Leo, buzzed the intercom. Ariana, he said, his voice tight. I have Frank Dorrell from Harborline Logistics on line 1. He says it is urgent. Harborline was one of our oldest clients. Frank was a good man, a straight shooter who had trusted me when my company was nothing but a laptop and a prayer. I picked up the phone, forcing a brightness into my voice that I did not feel. Frank, I said, good morning. To what do I owe the pleasure? Ariana, Frank said. There was no warmth in his voice. He sounded uncomfortable, like a man speaking with a gun pressed to his ribs. Look, I am going to make this quick because I should not be making this call at all. But we go back 5 years. My stomach dropped. What is it? Frank? We had a board meeting this morning. He said, we were discussing the renewal of your contract for the automation integration, and then our chief financial officer brought up a concern. He said he heard a rumor that your firm is under investigation. I gripped the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. Investigation? By whom? He did not say. Frank said, he just said he got a tip. Something about regulatory non-compliance. Something about a founding partner being involved in a financial breach at a previous employer. He said we might want to pause the renewal until the smoke clears. Frank, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. That is absurd. We are fully compliant. Our audits are clean. This is gossip. I know. Ariana, Frank said. And I told him that. But corporate boards are skittish animals. They hear the word investigation and they run for the hills. I bought you some time, but not much. If there is something going on, you need to tell me. There is nothing, I said firmly. Frank sighed. I hope you are right. But where there is smoke, the fire marshal usually shows up. Fix this, Ariana, before it burns us both. The line went dead. I stood there, holding the receiver, listening to the dial tone. It was starting, the vague rumors, the whispers in boardrooms, the nameless accusations that you could not fight because they had no face. I knew exactly where the smoke was coming from. I grabbed my coat and left the office. I did not tell Tessa where I was going. I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eyes. Grant's office was in the financial district, a glass tower that looked down on the rest of the city with arrogant indifference. He worked for Vanguard Thread Partners, a boutique consulting firm that specialized in high-stakes problem-solving. I did not make an appointment. I walked past the receptionist, ignoring her protests, and pushed open the door to his corner office. Grant was sitting on a leather sofa, reviewing a document with a red pen. He looked up, surprised, but his smile appeared instantly, practiced and smooth. Ariana, he said, capping the pen, to what do I owe the ambush? Usually, people call first. I stood in the center of the room, trembling with rage. Harborline Logistics. I said, do you know them? Grant frowned, feigning confusion. Harborline? The shipping company? I think I have heard of them. Why? Because someone called their board this morning. I said, someone told them I was under investigation. Someone poisoned a contract renewal that I have spent 3 years building. Grant stood up, walking over to a side table to pour a glass of water. That sounds terrible. Ari, but why are you yelling at me? Because it was you. Grant, I snapped. You are the only one who knows about the Briar Vale emails. You are the only one who would benefit from seeing me fail right now. Grant turned, holding the glass. He took a sip, watching me over the rim. You sound paranoid. Ariana. I am not paranoid, I shouted. I am under attack. You threatened me in the lobby of my building. You told me not to embarrass the family. And 2 days later, my clients are hearing rumors about regulatory breaches. Do the math. Grant set the glass down. He walked toward me, his face shifting into an expression of pity that was more insulting than a slap. You know what your problem is? He asked softly. You always think I am the villain. You are the villain. I said, No, Grant said. He shook his head. I am just the person who sees you clearly. You create these narratives where everyone is out to get you because it is easier than admitting the truth. What truth? I demanded. That you are terrified. He said, You are terrified that you are not actually good enough for the level you are trying to reach. So when things get hard, when clients get cold feet, you look for a monster to blame, and I am the convenient monster. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You cannot handle being average. Ariana, that is the tragedy of your life. You have average talent and average intelligence, but you have this desperate, clawing ambition that makes you miserable. I am not sabotaging you. The world is just correcting your inflated self-perception. I stared at him. The gaslighting was so precise, so beautifully constructed. That for a second, I almost believed him. I almost wondered if I had imagined the threats, the emails, the look in Mara's eyes. But then I remembered the file with the timestamps. You are a liar, I said, my voice cold, and I'm going to prove it. Grant smiled, a genuine, amused smile. Go ahead. Ari, prove it. But remember, when you throw mud, you lose ground. I turned and walked out. I did not slam the door. I closed it gently, with the finality of a coffin lid. When I returned to the office, Tessa was waiting for me. She had moved her command center into my office, her laptop connected to the main monitor. Where were you? She asked. Confirming a hypothesis, I said, throwing my coat onto the sofa. Did you find anything? Tessa spun her chair around. I traced the access logs for the anonymous file drop. The one with the Brightwell emails, and the IP address routed through the North Pine Community Foundation. Like we thought, Tessa said. But I dug deeper. I cross-referenced the device MAC address with known public networks in the city. She tapped a key, and a map appeared on the screen. A red dot pulsed in the center of downtown. The device that uploaded the file also connected to a secure Wi-Fi network 20 minutes later. She said, At the Apex co-working building on 4th Street. I stared at the map. The Apex building. That is where Vanguard Thread has their overflow suite. I said, Grant's firm rents the entire 16th floor. Tessa nodded. Exactly. Someone uploaded the file at North Pine, then walked, or drove, 4 blocks to the Apex building and logged into the corporate network there. It is a physical link. Ariana, it is not just a digital ghost. It puts the leaker in Grant's orbit. I sank into my chair. It was him, or someone working for him. I need to understand what they have. I said, I need to understand the weapon. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a physical notebook. I needed to write it down. I needed to see the logic of the past. 7 years ago, Briar Vale Credit Union. It was a small institution, serving mostly blue-collar workers in the manufacturing belt. They had overextended on commercial real estate loans right before the market dipped. When I arrived with the Brightwell team, they were technically insolvent. The regulators were circling. If they failed a stress test on Friday, the FDIC would seize them on Monday. 500 people would lose their jobs immediately. I found a way to fix the balance sheet. I reclassified a series of long-term hold-to-maturity assets as available for sale, which allowed us to mark them up to current market value, artificially inflating the capital buffer. It was a loophole. It was legal. Technically, if you had the intent to sell. We did not have the intent to sell. We just needed the number to look higher for 3 days until a merger with a larger bank could go through. I wrote the instruction. I signed the override. The merger went through. The jobs were saved. I felt like a hero. But 6 months later, Briar Vale collapsed anyway. The acquiring bank absorbed the losses and shut down the branches. The rumors at the time were that the hole in the balance sheet was bigger than anyone thought. Not because of the loans, but because someone had been siphoning money out the back door. Misappropriated funds, embezzlement. I looked at the notebook. If Grant released the email where I authorized the asset reclassification, it would look like I was part of the cover-up. It would look like I cooked the books to hide the theft. I was the perfect scapegoat, the ambitious 26-year-old consultant who signed the paper that hid the crime. But I did not steal the money. I whispered to the empty room. I just held the door open for the people who did. That evening, the office was quiet. The cleaning crew was moving through the bullpen, the hum of their vacuum cleaners a low drone. I was still at my desk, staring at the timeline I had drawn. When the glass door to my office opened, I looked up, expecting Tessa. It was Mara. She was wearing a trench coat, wet from the rain, and a baseball cap pulled low over her eyes. She looked less like a Pulitzer winner and more like a fugitive. Mara? I stood up. How did you get in here? The front door was unlocked. She said. Her voice was tight. She walked in and closed the door behind her. Locking it, she turned to face me. You need to listen to me, Ariana, and you need to listen fast. What is this? I asked. Is this another interview? Are you recording this? No recording, Mara said. She pulled off her cap, her hair falling damp around her face. I am here because I am concerned. Concerned about what? About my compliance history? Or about whether your fiancé is going to destroy me before the wedding? Mara flinched. She walked over to the window, looking down at the street as if checking for a tail. Grant is escalating, she said. I heard him on the phone today. He was talking to a contact at the state regulator's office. He is not just spreading rumors. Ariana, he is trying to trigger a formal audit of your current company. I felt the blood drain from my face. An audit now, with the investors already spooked, would kill us. Why are you telling me this? I asked. You are marrying him. You are helping him. You wrote the article. I wrote a profile. Mara said. I did not write a hit piece. There is a difference. Is there? I asked. You asked me about the rules. You asked me about the gray areas. You handed him the knife. Mara turned back to me. Her eyes were dark and conflicted. North Pine pressured me. She said, I froze. What? Years ago, she said. Before the series, before the awards, I was working on a story about a property development deal that went bad. North Pine was the primary funder. They called my editor. They threatened to pull advertising from the paper. They threatened to blacklist the entire publication from their charity events. And? I asked. And I softened the story. Mara said. She looked down at her hands. I removed the names of the board members. I focused on the market conditions instead of the corruption. It was subtle, but it was a compromise. And in exchange? I asked. In exchange, I got access. She said, I got the interviews for the next big story. I got the grant that allowed me to spend 6 months investigating the water crisis. I did good work with that grant. Ariana, I exposed real corruption. But the foundation of that work was a compromise I made with North Pine. I stared at her. She was admitting to an ethical breach that could destroy her career if it came out. Why are you telling me this? I repeated. Because I see the pattern. Mara said, Grant is doing the same thing to you. He is using North Pine's leverage to force you into a corner. He wants you to compromise. He wants you to beg. I walked around my desk, stopping a few feet from her. Did you take the interview to help him? I asked. Or did you take it to expose him? Mara looked at me. Her expression was unreadable. I took the interview because your name kept coming up. She said, coming up where? In the files. She said, in the archives of the North Pine Foundation. I was researching Silas Greer for a retrospective, and I kept seeing references to Brightwell Strategy Group. And then I saw your name, not as a consultant, but as a person of interest. A person of interest? I whispered. They have been watching you for a long time. Ariana, Mara said, since Briar Vale, you are not just a random target. You are a loose end, and loose ends make people like Silas Greer nervous. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She placed it on my desk. This is a name, she said. If you want to understand what really happened at Briar Vale, you need to look at who was giving the orders, not just your boss, the person above him. She turned to the door. Wait, I said. Mara, whose side are you on? Mara paused, her hand on the doorknob. I am on the side of the story, she said. And right now, I do not know how this one ends. She opened the door and vanished into the shadowed hallway. I looked down at the paper. It had a single name written in elegant script. Julian Vane. I knew the name. Julian Vane was a junior partner at Brightwell when I was there. He was young, ambitious, and had a reputation for being ruthless. I called Elena Ward immediately. Elena, I said when she answered, Julian Vane. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Ariana, Elena said, her voice guarded. Why are you asking about Julian? Because Mara Voss just gave me his name. I said, what was his role in Briar Vale? Elena sighed, a heavy, weary sound. Julian was the engagement partner. She said, he was the one who managed the relationship with the client's board. He was the one who told Marcus to push for the asset reclassification. But Marcus gave me the order. I said, Marcus was a messenger. Elena said, Julian was the architect. I closed my eyes, trying to reconstruct the hierarchy. Julian Vane. Where is he now? I asked. Elena laughed. A bitter sound. Look him up. Ariana. I typed the name into my browser. Julian Vane. The first result was a LinkedIn profile. Julian Vane, Senior Strategic Advisor, North Pine Community Foundation Board of Directors. The room spun. The man who had orchestrated the Briar Vale cover-up was now sitting on the board of the foundation that employed my brother. It was a closed loop, a perfect circle of influence. I asked Elena the question that had been haunting me. Elena, during the collapse, the audit trails, the emails, they were destroyed. Elena said, most of them. Julian ordered a server migration right after the acquisition. Data was lost, corrupted. It was convenient, but my email survived. I said, the one where I authorized the fix, because they kept it. Elena said, they kept the one piece of evidence that pointed to a low-level associate, and they deleted everything that pointed to the partners. It was an insurance policy. Ariana, in case the regulators ever came back. They had a body to throw to the wolves, and I am the body. I said, you were the body then. Elena said, now? Now you are a liability. Because if you get famous, if you get on that list, people start looking at your history, and if they look too closely at Briar Vale, they might see Julian standing behind you. I hung up the phone. I wasn't just fighting my brother. I was fighting a system that had been designed to protect powerful men by sacrificing ambitious women. The next morning, the blow I had been dreading finally landed. Kevin from Crown and Alder Ventures called me at 10 o'clock. Ariana, he said. His voice was apologetic, which terrified me more than anger. I wanted to give you a heads up personally. What is it? Kevin, we received a packet yesterday, he said, an ethics dossier. It was anonymous. Sent to our compliance officer. A dossier? I repeated. It was professional. Ariana, Kevin said, it wasn't just a rant. It had timelines. It had excerpts of emails from your time at Brightwell. It painted a picture of systemic risk. It alleged that you have a history of bypassing regulatory controls to achieve short-term gains. I felt the nausea rise in my throat. Kevin, I said, that is a fabrication. Those emails are out of context. I believe you, Kevin said surprisingly. Or at least, I want to believe you. The thing is, this packet was too clean. It used industry terminology. It was formatted like a legal discovery document. This feels like a hit job. Ariana, someone spent money to put this together. So what does that mean for the investment? I asked. It means we are frozen, Kevin said. We cannot deploy capital into a founder who is the target of a professional smear campaign. It is too much reputational risk for our LPs. Clear this up. Ariana, find out who is shooting at you, because until you stop the bleeding, we cannot come near you. I put the phone down. They had weaponized my past. They had professionalized the destruction of my character. I looked at Tessa. She was watching me, her face pale. It was a professional hit. I said, they sent a dossier to the investors. Tessa slammed her hand on the desk. This is war. Ariana, this is not a family squabble. This is industrial sabotage. I nodded slowly. I felt a strange calm settling over me. The fear was gone. The anxiety about being liked, about being good, about being the perfect little sister, it had burned away. Get me Noah Sutter, I said. The crisis attorney? Tessa asked. He is expensive. I do not care, I said. And find me Maris Klein, the forensic communications specialist? Yes, I said. I want to trace every electron of that dossier. I want to know who typed it, who printed it, and whose courier delivered it. I stood up and walked to the whiteboard. I picked up a red marker. I wrote Grant on one side. I wrote Mara in the middle. I wrote North Pine on the other side. And under North Pine, I wrote Julian Vane. I drew lines connecting them. We are not going to defend ourselves anymore. Tessa, I said, we are going to counterattack. 2 days later, Noah Sutter sat in my conference room. He was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. Wearing a suit that cost more than my first year's salary, Maris Klein sat next to him, a woman with sharp glasses and a laptop covered in stickers. This is a sophisticated operation, Maris said, projecting a graphic onto the wall. The dossier sent to Crown and Alder was formatted using a specific version of legal software. We analyzed the metadata of the digital copy they received. And, I asked, it matches the software license used by Gleam and Rook. Maris said, who are they? A boutique PR firm. Noah said, they specialize in strategic communications, which is a polite way of saying they plant negative stories and manage crises for high-net-worth clients. And here's the kicker, Maris said. Gleam and Rook was recently retained by the North Pine Community Foundation for executive communications support. I looked at the screen. North Pine hired the PR firm. The PR firm created the dossier. The dossier destroyed my funding. And Grant works for North Pine. I said, Grant is the bridge. Noah said, he likely coordinated the talking points. He knows your history. He fed them the raw data, the Briarvale story, and they packaged it into a weapon. So we sue them? Tessa asked. Not yet, Noah said. If we sue now, it becomes a public fight. The allegations get repeated in the court filings. The press picks it up. You get labeled as the scandal-plagued CEO. That is what they want. They want to bait you into a loud, messy fight that destroys your credibility. So what do? I asked. We get leverage. Noah said, we need proof that Grant and North Pine conspired to defraud your investors. We need a smoking gun that links Grant directly to the fabrication of the dossier. My phone buzzed on the table. I looked down. It was a calendar notification. New event invite. Sender, Mara Voss. Title, off the record. You need to see this. Location, North Pine Foundation. Event hall, B. Time, tonight, 8 p.m. I stared at the screen. What is it? Tessa asked. I showed her the phone. Mara wants me to come to North Pine tonight. I said, it is a trap. Noah said immediately, do not go. I looked at the location pin. It was deep inside the enemy's fortress. If it is a trap, I said, thinking of the look in Mara's eyes when she gave me Julian Vane's name. Then she is going to spring it. But if it is an offer, I picked up my phone and accepted the invite. I am going. I said, Ariana. Tessa warned, I am going. I repeated, but I am not going alone. Maris, can you rig a wire? Maris smiled. A sharp, predatory grin. I can rig a broadcast studio if you need one. I looked at the whiteboard again. The lines were all pointing to one place. Tonight, I said, we see what is really inside the machine. The North Pine Community Foundation event was held in a renovated textile mill on the riverfront. A space of exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling glass that screamed expensive philanthropy. I arrived at 8 o'clock, wearing a black dress that felt like armor. My invitation was legitimate, forwarded by a confused donor who thought I might be interested in their clean water initiative, but I felt like a spy crossing enemy lines. The wire Maris had taped to my chest was uncomfortable. a small, hard node of plastic pressing against my skin. I walked into the main hall. The air smelled of orchid arrangements and money. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne. In the center of the room, a string quartet played something soothing and unrecognizable. I scanned the crowd, looking for Mara. Instead, I saw my brother. Grant was standing near the podium, laughing with a group of older men in tuxedos. He looked completely at home. He wasn't just a guest. He was directing the flow of the conversation, touching an elbow here, guiding a donor there. A waiter passed by him, and Grant leaned in to whisper a direction, pointing toward the bar. The waiter nodded deferentially and hurried off. I stopped cold. Grant had always told us that his consulting work was strictly corporate. Supply chains, efficiency models, boring logistical heavy lifting. He had never mentioned that he was an insider at the city's most powerful foundation. He moved through the room with the easy arrogance of a man who owned the keys. He spotted me. For a second, his smile faltered, replaced by a look of sharp, calculating assessment. Then the mask slid back into place. He raised his glass to me across the room, a silent toast that felt like a challenge. Before I could move, a hand gripped my arm. "Don't look at him." A voice hissed. I turned. It was Mara. She was wearing a silver gown that made her look like a statue carved from ice. Her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "Come with me," she said. "Now." She led me away from the main hall, down a long corridor lined with black and white portraits of North Pine's board members. We turned a corner into a service hallway, the noise of the party fading behind a heavy fire door. Mara stopped and leaned against the wall, her chest heaving slightly. "You should not be here." "Ariana," she said, "you invited me." I said, "I sent that invite before I knew he would be running the floor tonight." Mara said, she looked terrified, "Do you see who he is talking to? That is Silas Greer, the founder. Grant is not just a consultant here. He is the gatekeeper." I looked at her. "Explain it to me, Mara. The whole thing. No more riddles." Mara took a deep breath. She looked down at her hands, twisting the engagement ring on her finger, the ring Grant had given her. "North Pine is a washing machine," she said, her voice trembling. "It is not just about charity. It is about reputation laundering. Do you know where the initial endowment came from?" "Donors," I guessed. "It came from the liquidation of distressed assets," Mara said, "including the assets of the bank that absorbed Briar Vale. The executives who ran that bank into the ground? The ones who should have gone to prison for embezzlement? They are on the donor wall. They gave millions to North Pine. In exchange, North Pine gave them awards, galas, positive press. They bought their way back into society." "And the journalists?" I asked, thinking of her own glowing profile of Greer. "We were the currency," Mara whispered. "North Pine funds fellowships, grants. They give access to young, hungry reporters. In exchange, we write the stories they want written, or more importantly, we kill the stories they want buried." I felt a wave of nausea. It was an ecosystem of corruption, perfectly disguised as benevolence. "And Grant?" I asked. "Where does he fit in?" Mara looked up, her eyes wet. "Grant pitched himself to Greer 3 years ago. He sold himself as a strategic fixer. He told them that in the information age, threats do not come from regulators. They come from viral narratives, from people asking the wrong questions." She paused, and the next words hit me like a physical blow. "He told them he could neutralize threats before they became public," Mara said. "And when your company started getting attention, when you started getting nominated for awards, Grant flagged you as a threat." "Me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why me?" "Because you know the truth about Briar Vale," Mara said. "Even if you do not realize it, you were there. You saw the asset reclassification. You are a loose thread that could unravel the whole tapestry if you ever decided to pull on it. Grant told Greer he would handle you. He said he would keep you small. He said he would make sure you never had a platform big enough to be heard." I leaned against the wall, the cold plaster seeping through my dress. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just sibling rivalry. It was business. My brother was destroying my life because it was a line item in his contract. "We have to go," Mara said, pushing off the wall. "If he sees us talking—" The door at the end of the hallway opened. A security guard stepped through. He looked at us, then spoke into his earpiece. "Go," Mara whispered. "The back exit is to the left." I ran. The next morning, my apartment looked like a command bunker. Maris Klein was sitting on my floor, surrounded by cables and monitors. Noah Sutter was pacing the kitchen, drinking his 4th cup of coffee. I sat on the sofa, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. I was still shaking. "We have the trace," Maris said, her voice cutting through the tension. She pointed to a screen. "The ethics packet that was sent to your investors? It originated from a server cluster owned by Gleam and Rook, the PR firm." I said dully. "Yes," Maris said, "but here's the smoking gun. Gleam and Rook subcontracts their high-risk research to a third party to keep their own hands clean. We cracked their vendor list." She hit a key. A document appeared on the screen. Vendor ID, VTP Consulting LLC. Service, Strategic Research and Narrative Containment. Principal, Grant James. "There it is," Noah said softly. He stopped pacing. "That is the link. Grant's firm was paid by the PR firm that was paid by North Pine to produce the dossier that destroyed your funding. It is a conspiracy to commit tortious interference. So we can arrest him?" I asked. Noah sighed. "It is not that simple. Ariana, we have proof of a business relationship. We do not have proof of intent to defame. Grant will argue he was just doing background research for a client. He will say the dossier was factual. But it is not factual," I yelled. "It implies I am a criminal." Noah sat down opposite me. "Ariana, listen to me. If we go public with this, if we sue, everything comes out. The Briarvale emails, the compliance override. The press will not care about the nuance. They will not care that you were 26 and trying to save jobs. They will see fraud and cover-up. You will be dragged through the mud alongside him." I stared at him. "So I lose either way? I stay quiet and let him destroy my company? Or I speak up and destroy my own reputation?" "There is a third way," Noah said, "but it requires you to do something very difficult." "What?" "You have to own the sin." Noah said, "You have to tell the story of Briarvale yourself. Before they do, you have to admit the mistake, explain the context, and apologize. You take away their ammunition by firing the gun yourself." I looked at Maris. She nodded. "It is the only way to control the blast radius." She said. I stood up. "I need to see my parents first." "Why?" Noah asked. "Because," I said, grabbing my keys, "I need to know whose side they are on." My parents lived in a colonial house in the suburbs, a place of manicured lawns and polite silences. I found them in the sunroom. My mother was arranging flowers. My father was reading a biography of Churchill. They looked up when I stormed in. They saw the look on my face, and the air went out of the room. "Ariana?" my mother said, putting down a hydrangea. "What is wrong?" "Grant is working for North Pine." I said. I didn't yell. My voice was deadly quiet. "He is being paid to destroy my company. He sent a dossier to my investors accusing me of fraud." My father closed his book. He took off his reading glasses. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. "We know he has connections." My father said slowly. "Connections?" I repeated. "He is a cleaner for corrupt executives." "Dad, and he is targeting me. Did you know?" My mother looked away. "We knew he was worried about you," she said weakly. "He told us that your nomination for the Boreal list was dangerous. He said people were asking questions about your past. He said if you got too famous, you would get hurt. So you let him hurt me first?" I asked. "To save me?" "We asked him to stop," my father said. He stood up, looking smaller than I remembered. "We begged him, Ariana. Last month, when he told us he was going to intervene, we said, 'She is your sister, Grant. Let her have this.' And what did he say?" I asked. My father looked down at his shoes. He said he had no choice. He said he was in too deep. I looked at them. They weren't evil. They loved me. In their own way. But they were cowards. They had known for months that their son was holding a knife to my throat, and they had chosen to close their eyes because watching was too painful. You chose him, I said. You always choose him, because you are afraid of him. Ariana, please. My mother sobbed. I am done. I said, I am done being the one who absorbs the damage so you can pretend we are a happy family. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I felt a severance in my chest, painful and clean, like a limb being removed. I drove to the address Mara had texted me. It was a motel on the outskirts of the city, a place where no one from our world would ever be caught dead. Room 12. I knocked. Mara opened the door. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. Her hair was messy. The Ice Queen was gone. You look terrible, I said, stepping inside. The room smelled of stale smoke and anxiety. Mara sat on the edge of the bed. He knows, she said. Grant? He knows I talked to you at the party, she said. He asked me about it this morning. He asked why we were whispering in the hallway. What did you tell him? I told him I was trying to convince you to withdraw. Mara said, I told him I was doing his work for him. Did he believe you? I do not know, she whispered. He just smiled. You know that smile. I sat in the plastic chair by the window. I told her about Maris. I told her about the vendor link. We have him. Mara. I said, we can prove he is the source of the dossier. But we need more. We need to prove North Pine is pulling the strings. Mara reached into her bag and pulled out a hard drive. This is my insurance policy, she said. What is it? It is the raw audio from my interviews with Silas Greer, she said. The ones I did for the profile. There are hours of tape. Most of it is fluff. But there is one segment. One segment where he forgot the recorder was running. And he talks about the firewall, Mara said. He mentions Grant by name. He says, the James boy is expensive, but he keeps the firewall intact. I stared at the drive. That connects Grant to Greer. That proves he is an agent of the Foundation. But there is something else I need to tell you. Mara said. Her voice broke. What? My engagement. She said. Tears spilled over her cheeks. I did not fall in love with him, Ariana. At least, not at first. I waited. I started dating him 2 years ago because I suspected he was the link. She said, I was trying to investigate North Pine. I thought if I got close to Grant, I could get access to his files. I could expose the whole laundering scheme. I felt a cold shock. You were using him? Yes, she said. I was going to be the journalist who broke the story of the decade. But then, he found my notes. He found out. He found a draft of my expose on his laptop. Mara said, he didn't break up with me. He leveraged me. He told me that if I published one word, he would release evidence that I had taken bribes to kill previous stories, evidence he had fabricated. But it looked real. He trapped me. Ariana. He said the only way to save my career was to marry him, to become part of the family, to be inside the firewall instead of outside. I looked at her with a mixture of horror and pity. She wasn't a villain. She was a hostage. He is a monster. I said, yes, she said. But he is a monster who thinks he has won. I stood up. He has not won yet. I looked at her. I have a plan. But it requires us to blow everything up. Your career, my company, the family name, everything burns. Mara wiped her face. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a spark of the fierce, brilliant woman she was supposed to be. Pass me the matches, she said. That afternoon, I met Noah and Maris at a rented studio space in the Arts District. We set up a single camera against a plain gray backdrop. Are you sure about this? Noah asked. Once this is out, you cannot take it back. I am sure, I said. I sat in the chair. I pinned a microphone to my lapel. I looked into the lens. Roll it. I said. Maris hit the button. The red light blinked. "My name is Ariana James." I said, "I am the CEO of James Operations. And 7 years ago, when I was 26 years old, I made a decision that I have regretted every day since." I told the story. I told the truth about Briar Vale. I didn't make excuses. I didn't blame Julian Vane or Marcus Thorne. I explained the pressure, the jobs at stake, and the technical breach I authorized. I explained that I thought I was saving the bank, but I was actually hiding a theft I didn't know existed. I was wrong. I said to the camera, I prioritized a short-term fix over long-term transparency. I am telling you this now because I refuse to let my past be weaponized by people who are hiding crimes far worse than mine. "Cut," Maris said. "We saved the file. We encrypted it. We set a timer. Sunday morning, the family brunch. It was a tradition my mother refused to cancel. Even though the house felt like a funeral parlor. I arrived at 10. Grant was already there, eating a croissant. Mara was sitting next to him, staring at her coffee. My parents were in the kitchen, moving quietly, as if afraid to make noise. Grant looked at me. He looked fresh, rested, happy. "Ariana," he said, "I heard you visited Mom and Dad yesterday. They were quite upset." I sat down across from him. I didn't touch the food. "I know about Gleam and Rook, Grant," I said. Grant stopped chewing. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. "I do not know what that is," he said. "Do not insult my intelligence." I said, "Maris Klein traced the packet. We have the vendor logs. We know you wrote the dossier." Grant sighed. He leaned back in his chair. "You hired Maris Klein? That is expensive. Ari, you are burning cash you do not have. Why are you doing this?" I asked. "I want to hear you say it." Grant looked at the parents in the kitchen, ensuring they were out of earshot. Then he leaned across the table. His eyes were dead. "Because you are a liability," he said softly, "and I get paid to remove liabilities. I am your sister." I whispered. "That is why I tried to do it quietly," he said. "I tried to scare you off. I tried to get you to withdraw. But you are so stubborn. You forced my hand." He took a sip of juice. "And here is the reality. Ariana, you are going to stop. You are going to withdraw from the Boreal list. You are going to step down as CEO of your company. You are going to take a nice, quiet job in middle management somewhere far away, and if I do not?" Grant smiled. "Then I will release the rest of the Briar Vale file. Not just the emails, the witness statements I have curated. I will make sure you never work again. I will make sure you are indicted. I will bury you so deep that even Google won't find you." He stood up and adjusted his cuffs. "I am doing this because you do not know how this world works." "Ariana," he said, "there are no heroes. There are just people who have leverage, and people who get crushed." He patted my cheek. His hand was warm. "Be smart. Ari, for once." He walked out of the room. Mara didn't look up. I drove back to my office. The city looked different now. It wasn't a place of opportunity. It was a battlefield. I sat at my desk. My phone pinged. It was an email from the Boreal Business Review. Subject: Urgent. Final eligibility requirement. Dear Ariana, due to late-breaking concerns regarding your candidacy, the editorial board requires you to sign the attached legal attestation regarding your professional history. This document indemnifies Boreal Business Review from any future liability related to undisclosed regulatory breaches. You must return the signed document within 48 hours. Failure to do so will result in your immediate removal from the 30 under list. Regards, Quinn Halloway, Editor-in-Chief. I looked at the attachment. It was 5 pages long. It was a confession disguised as a contract. If I signed it, I was admitting guilt to protect them. If I didn't sign it, I was out. Grant had timed it perfectly. He had squeezed Boreal, and now Boreal was squeezing me. I looked at the clock. 48 hours. I picked up the phone and called Mara. "It is time," I said. The 48 hours Boreal gave me to sign the attestation became a strange, suspended twilight. Time seemed to move differently inside the war room we had created in my apartment. My living room was no longer a home. It was a tactical operations center. cluttered with server racks Maris Klein had installed and stacks of legal files Noah Sutter was reviewing. My partnership with Mara Voss had become a lifeline. We did not speak like friends. We spoke like spies trading secrets across a border. She used an encrypted messaging app to feed me the internal deliberations of the Boreal editorial board, and in return, I gave her the raw data linking my brother to the North Pine reputation laundering machine. At 2 o'clock on Monday, my phone buzzed with a message from Mara. Quinn Halloway is asking if you have a criminal record in any jurisdiction. He is under pressure from a donor named Silas Greer. They are looking for a reason to disqualify you that does not look political. I showed the message to Noah. They are trying to force a resignation, Noah said, rubbing his eyes. If they disqualify you, they have to explain why. If you withdraw, or if you sign that attestation and then a scandal breaks, they can say you misled them. They want you to be the architect of your own exit. I picked up the phone and dialed Quinn Halloway, the editor-in-chief of Boreal Business Review. Ariana, Quinn answered. His voice was brisk, professional, and entirely hollow. Do we have the signed document? The deadline is approaching. Hello? Quinn? I said, I have reviewed the attestation with my counsel. We are happy to sign, provided we can amend Clause 4. There was a pause. What is wrong with Clause 4? Clause 4 states that I indemnify Boreal against any reputational damage arising from past or future regulatory inquiries. I said, that is too broad. Quinn, every company in my sector deals with regulatory inquiries. I propose we narrow the language to confirmed criminal convictions. I cannot do that, Quinn said quickly. The legal department insisted on the standard language. It is not standard. Quinn, I said, keeping my voice steady. I checked the attestations sent to the other finalists. 3 of them are my peers. They received a 1-page disclosure form. I received a 5-page liability shield. Why is my form different? Quinn cleared his throat. There was the rustle of papers on his end. We have had unique concerns raised regarding your candidacy. We need extra assurance. Concerns raised by whom? I asked. By the North Pine Community Foundation? Silence. I cannot disclose our sources, Quinn said, his voice dropping an octave. Just sign the paper. Ariana, if you have nothing to hide, it should not be a problem. I am not signing a warrant for my own execution. I said, then we have a problem. Quinn said. He hung up. I looked at Noah. He nodded grimly. That confirms it, Noah said. They do not want to protect you. They want to set you up. They are preparing to publish a story about your ethical lapses, and they need that signature to prove they did their due diligence before they burn you. Grant did not wait for Boreal to pull the trigger. He opened a second front. At 4 o'clock, Tessa walked into my apartment. She was not holding a laptop. She was holding her phone, and she looked like she had just seen a ghost. Lumenmark called. She said, and? They are pausing the partnership. She said, I felt the air leave my lungs. Lumenmark was the deal that would secure our revenue for the next 2 years. It was the linchpin of our growth strategy. Why? I asked. The VP of Procurement told me they received a risk assessment report, Tessa said. It flagged leadership distraction and potential reputational volatility. He said they cannot afford to integrate a vendor whose CEO is about to be the center of a media storm. Who sent the report? He would not say. Tessa said, but he let slip that he had lunch yesterday with a consultant from Vanguard Thread Partners. Grant. He was not just attacking my reputation. He was starving my company. He knew exactly which lever to pull to make the cash flow stop. I sat down on the floor, leaning my back against the sofa. The numbers ran through my head. Without Lumenmark, our burn rate was too high. We had 3 months of runway, maybe 4. Grant knew that. He had seen my books. He was counting on the fact that I would panic. He was counting on the fact that I would choose solvency over pride. I am not folding. I said, Ariana. Tessa said gently, we have 22 employees. If the revenue stops. I stood up. Call an all-hands meeting. Tomorrow morning. What are you going to tell them? The truth. I said, the office was quiet on Tuesday morning. The air was thick with the kind of tension that precedes a layoff. People were whispering in corners, their eyes darting toward the glass walls of the conference room. I stood at the front of the room. I did not use a slide deck. I did not use corporate speak. I know you have heard rumors about the Lumenmart deal. I said, my voice echoed slightly in the silence, I want to confirm that they have paused the contract. A ripple of unease went through the room. However, I continued, I want to be clear about why. This is not a failure of our technology. This is not a failure of your work. This is the result of an external attack on my reputation, orchestrated by a competitor who happens to be my brother. I saw the shock on their faces. CEOs did not talk about family feuds. I am fighting this. I said, but I will not let you become collateral damage, effective immediately. I am reducing my salary to 0. I am liquidating my personal equity in the bond market to cover payroll. No one is getting laid off. No one is missing a paycheck. This company is sound, and we are going to weather this storm. I looked at them. I saw fear. Yes, but I also saw something else. Respect. Tessa stepped forward. We are with you. Ari? She said. I nodded, unable to speak. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and put my head in my hands. I had bought loyalty, but I had bought it with my life savings. I had raised the stakes. Now, I had to win. Wednesday brought the breakthrough we needed, and it came from the ashes of the past. Mara arrived at my apartment at dusk. She was carrying a heavy box of files. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red, but there was a frantic energy vibrating off her. I found it, she said, dumping the box on the coffee table. What is this? I asked. I went back to the archives, she said. Not the digital ones, the physical ones. North Pine keeps hard copies of their legal settlements in a storage facility in West Havenport. I still have a key card from when I was writing the Greer profile. She pulled a thick folder from the box. It was stamped confidential. Arbitration record 19-04. What is it? Noah asked, leaning over. It is a sealed settlement, Mara said. From 3 years ago, a whistleblower from the bank that acquired Briar Vale tried to go public. He was going to testify that the bank knew about the insolvency before the acquisition and that they used the asset reclassification, your reclassification, Ariana, as a pretext to clear the books. And, I asked, and North Pine paid him $2 million to sign a non-disclosure agreement, Mara said. She flipped the page to the signature block. Look who managed the settlement, she said. I looked. The settlement was facilitated by a third-party mediator, but listed under strategic advisory for the defendant was a familiar corporate entity, Vanguard Thread Partners, and there, next to the firm's stamp, was a signature I knew as well as my own. Grant James. He knew. I whispered. He did not just know, Mara said. He was paid to bury it. Grant was the fixer who negotiated the silence of the one man who could have exonerated you. He knew you were innocent of fraud. He knew you were just a pawn, and he took a fee to make sure the truth never came out. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was not just betrayal. It was exploitation. He had sold my reputation to buy his own success. This is the linchpin, Noah said. He took the file and held it like a holy relic. This proves a conspiracy. It proves North Pine and Grant James have a financial interest in suppressing the truth about Briar Vale. It destroys their credibility. But we can't just release it, Maris said from her corner. It is a sealed arbitration record. If we leak it, North Pine will sue us for breach of privacy. They will get an injunction before the story hits the newsstands. We do not leak it. I said, we use it. Maris turned her screen toward us. I have the second half of the equation, she said. She pulled up a log of digital timestamps. We know Grant wrote the ethics dossier, she said, but we needed proof that he uploaded it to the Gleam and Rook server. I ran a correlation analysis on his phone's geolocation data, which I acquired through a purchase of commercially available marketing data, and the server access logs. She pointed to a line of code. At 10:14 in the morning last Tuesday, Grant's phone was located inside the Vanguard Thread office. At 10:15, a user logged into the Gleam and Rook portal from that IP address. The user ID was GJ Vanguard. He used his own initials? I asked. He is arrogant, Maris said. He thought no one would ever look this deep. We have him. Ariana, we have digital proof that he authored the smear campaign. And we have physical proof that he was paid to hide the truth about the very scandal he is using to smear you. It is a perfect circle, Noah said. So we go public? Mara asked. Noah hesitated. If we release this now, without the right framing, it looks like a messy sibling feud. Sister accuses brother of sabotage. It is tabloid fodder. We need a platform. We need a moment where the world is watching, so we can tell the whole story at once. We need the Boreal announcement. I said, Thursday was the day my parents finally woke up. I was working in the war room when my phone rang. It was my mother. She was crying. Ariana. She sobbed. He was here. Grant? He came to the house. She said, he was furious. He said he knew you had hired investigators. He said you were out of control. What did he do? Mom? He sat us down. She said, her voice trembling. He told us that you are a liability to the family trust. He said that if we do not issue a statement distancing ourselves from your company, if we do not say that we are concerned about your mental health. She stopped, choking on a sob. What did he say? I pressed. He said he would cut off the payments for the beach house, she whispered. He said he would restructure the family trust to exclude us. He controls the assets. Ariana, we signed over the management to him 5 years ago because he said it would be more tax efficient. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. He had consolidated power over every part of our lives. He is blackmailing you. I said, he looked at your father. My mother said, her voice sounding small and broken, and he smiled. He said, I am doing this for her own good. She needs to hit rock bottom so she can start over. It was so cold. Ariana, it was like looking at a stranger. I am sorry. Mom, I said, I am sorry we did not believe you. She said, we thought he was just competitive. We did not know he was this. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hollow. My parents had finally seen the monster, but only because he had turned his teeth on them. I sat down at my desk and opened a blank document. I needed to write it down, not for the press, not for the lawyers, for me. Dear Mom, dear Dad, you asked me once why I work so hard. You asked why I couldn't just be happy with a normal job. You thought I was chasing status. I wasn't chasing status. I was running away. I was running from the feeling I had at every dinner table, every holiday, every birthday. The feeling that I was the audience for Grant's life. You let him rewrite our history. You let him tell the story where he was the genius and I was the diligent, average sister. You nodded when he made jokes about my little projects. You smoothed things over when he cut me down. You thought you were keeping the peace, but you were just helping him build the cage. I am done being the shadow. I am done being the liability. I am the CEO of a company that saves millions of dollars. I am a woman who built something from nothing. And I am going to burn his narrative to the ground, even if it means scorching the earth where we used to stand. I love you, but I choose me. I saved the document. I didn't send it. It sat on my desktop, a silent declaration of independence. Friday morning. The email from Boreal arrived at 9 o'clock. Dear Ariana, we regret to inform you that due to unresolved concerns regarding your professional history and your failure to sign the required attestation, you have been removed from consideration for the Boreal 30 Under list. The final list will be announced on Monday morning. We wish you the best. I stared at the screen. It was done. I was out. I felt a moment of vertigo. The sensation of the floor dropping away, the award I had chased, the validation I had craved, was gone. But then, the panic cleared. Monday morning, they were announcing the list on Monday. That meant the media cycle would be focused on Boreal on Monday. That is our window. I said to the room. Noah looked up. What? They are announcing on Monday. I said, They will have a press conference, a spotlight. We hijack it, Mara said. Her eyes lit up. We do not just release a statement, I said. We create a counter-narrative. We release the evidence at the exact moment they try to celebrate their list. We turn their moment of glory into an indictment of their corruption. It is risky, Noah said. If we miss the timing, we are just shouting into the wind. We won't miss, I said. My phone rang again. It was Mara's cell phone, sitting on the table. She picked it up. Hello? She said. She listened for a long minute. Her face went pale. She sank into the chair. Okay, she said. I understand. She hung up. Who was it? I asked. My editor, she said, at the Ledger Light Journal. And? North Pine's lawyers called him. She said, they told him that if I publish anything related to the foundation, any leaks, any audio, any documents, they will sue the paper for defamation and tortious interference. They threatened to bankrupt the publication. So he is killing the story? I asked. He has to. Mara said, he cannot risk the lawsuit. He told me to stand down. He said if I go rogue, he will fire me and disavow the reporting. She looked at me. Tears were standing in her eyes. If we do this, Ariana, she said, if we release the files, I lose my job. I lose my reputation as an objective journalist. I lose my career. I looked at her. I looked at the files on the table, the arbitration record, the email logs, the timeline of betrayal. We are both going to lose everything we built. I said, my company might not survive the scandal. Your career might end. Mara took a deep breath. She reached out and touched the hard drive containing the audio of Silas Greer. Grant told me once that power is the ability to write the story, she said softly. She looked up at me, and her expression hardened. Let's take the pen back, she said. The weekend was a blur of caffeine and code. My apartment had transformed into a command center that hummed with the heat of 3 servers and the nervous energy of 4 people who knew they were about to jump off a cliff. Noah Sutter, my attorney, was reviewing the final draft of the exposé package. It was not a blog post. It was not a rant. It was a forensic dossier, structured like a legal indictment. It contained the vendor logs connecting Grant to Gleam and Rook. It contained the affidavits from the former Briar Vale employees we had tracked down in 48 hours. It contained the timestamps of the file uploads. Maris Klein, the forensic specialist, was programming the distribution bot. We are not just sending this to the press, Maris said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. We are sending it to the State Attorney General, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Ethics Board of the Public Relations Society of America, and every major venture capital compliance officer in the state. Saturation strike, Noah said. If we just leak it to the media, North Pine can kill it with an injunction. If we file it with regulators and watchdogs simultaneously, it becomes a matter of public record. They cannot enjoin the truth if everyone already has a copy. I sat by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. I was calm. It was the terrifying, hollow calm of a soldier checking their weapon before the transport doors open. Mara was sitting on the floor, organizing the physical copies. She had not gone home. She had not spoken to Grant. She had effectively vanished, ghosting the man she was supposed to marry in 3 months. Are you ready? She asked, looking up at me. I looked at her. She was risking more than I was. I was risking a company. She was risking her identity. I am ready. I said, the Havenport Future Works Summit was held on Monday morning in the Grand Ballroom of the Omni Hotel. It was the premier event of the season, a gathering of tech innovators, venture capitalists, and policymakers. Ironically, I had been invited months ago to deliver a keynote on ethical innovation in the age of AI. When I arrived at the venue, the air was thick with the smell of expensive coffee and ambition. I walked through the lobby, flanked by Noah and Tessa. I saw people whispering. They had heard the rumors. They knew Lumenmart had paused our contract. They knew Boreal had removed me from the list. They looked at me like I was a walking ghost, a CEO who just didn't know she was dead yet. I went to the green room backstage. Grant was there. He was drinking sparkling water, chatting with the event organizer. When he saw me, he excused himself and walked over. He looked impeccable in a navy suit, his face a mask of brotherly concern. "Ariana," he said, lowering his voice. "I am surprised you came. Why wouldn't I?" I asked. "I am the keynote speaker." Grant sighed. He reached out and adjusted the lapel of my blazer. "Mom and Dad are in the second row," he said softly. "I brought them. I thought they should be here to support you. It is going to be hard. Ari, walking out there knowing that everyone knows." "Knows what?" "That you are finished," he said. "Boreal dropped you. Lumenmart is gone. The investors are spooked. If you go out there and try to give a speech about ethics, you are going to look ridiculous." He leaned closer. "Here is what you are going to do," he whispered. "You are going to go out there. You are going to give a short, vague speech about market conditions, and then you are going to announce that you are stepping down as CEO for personal reasons. If you do that, I can stop the rest of the Briarvale file from leaking. I can save you the embarrassment of an indictment." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had shared a playroom with me, who had taught me to ride a bike, and who was now holding a gun to my head. "You brought Mom and Dad?" I asked. "Yes," Grant said. "To take you home when this is over." "Good," I said. "I want them to see this." I walked past him toward the stage entrance. The ballroom was dark, illuminated only by the blue wash of the stage lights. There were 500 people in the audience. I walked up the steps to the podium. The applause was polite, scattered. I adjusted the microphone. I looked out into the blindness of the spotlight. I could see the outline of my parents in the second row. Grant was standing in the wings, arms crossed, waiting for me to surrender. Title of my talk today is Ethical Innovation. I began. My voice was steady. It echoed through the hall. But before we talk about algorithms, I want to talk about currency. I paused. In our world, we trade in two currencies. We trade in capital, and we trade in reputation. Capital is what we have. Reputation is who we are. I gripped the sides of the podium. For the last week, my reputation has been under attack. Rumors have been circulated that I am unethical, that I am a fraud, that I have built my career on a foundation of lies. I heard a murmur go through the crowd. This wasn't the standard script. These rumors are based on a grain of truth. I said, and because I believe that transparency is the only way to innovate, I am going to tell you that truth myself. I took a breath. 7 years ago, when I was 26, I was a junior consultant at Brightwell Strategy Group. I was assigned to the Briarvale Credit Union account. The bank was failing. 500 jobs were at risk. To save those jobs, I authorized a reclassification of assets that allowed the bank to pass a solvency audit. The room went dead silent. I did not steal money. I said, I did not profit, but I broke a procedural rule because I thought the outcome justified the means. I was wrong. The bank collapsed 6 months later because, unknown to me, the executives were looting the reserves. My decision to override the compliance check helped hide their theft. I looked directly at the camera at the back of the room. I own that mistake. I have lived with it for 7 years. But I will not allow that mistake to be weaponized by the very people who profited from the corruption I was trying to fix. I signaled to the tech booth. "Now," I said. At that exact second, Maris Klein hit enter in the control room 3 miles away. The email blast went out to 2,000 recipients. The Dropbox links went live on social media. The dossier hit the inboxes of every journalist in the room. I watched the audience. It started as a ripple. A few phones lit up, then a few more. Then a wave of blue light washed over the crowd as 500 people checked their notifications simultaneously. I saw a journalist in the front row look at his phone, then look up at me, his mouth open. "While you are reading the notification that just hit your inboxes," I said, "I want to provide some context. The documents you are looking at prove that the smear campaign against my company was not a random act of journalism. It was a paid operation." I pointed to the large screen behind me. Maris had hacked the feed. Instead of my slide deck, The screen now displayed the invoice from Gleam and Rook. Client: North Pine Community Foundation. Project: Executive Reputation Management. Subcontractor: Vanguard Thread Partners. It was 10 feet tall. The campaign was orchestrated by Vanguard Thread Partners. I said, a firm owned by my brother, Grant James. The crowd gasped. It was a sound I would never forget. The collective intake of breath when a polite fiction is shattered. Grant James was paid by the North Pine Community Foundation to destroy my credibility. I continued, why? Because North Pine is funded by the same executives who looted Briar Vale, and they needed to silence anyone who knew the truth. Grant ran onto the stage. He didn't look smooth anymore. He looked wild. He rushed toward the podium, his face twisted in a rictus of fury. "Cut the mic!" he screamed at the sound booth. "Cut the feed! She is lying. She is having a breakdown." He grabbed my arm, digging his fingers into my bicep. "Get off the stage. Ariana," he hissed. "You are done." I pulled my arm back, but he was stronger. "Security!" Grant yelled. "Get her off the stage!" That was when Mara stepped out. She didn't come from the wings. She came from the audience. She walked up the stairs in her jeans and blazer. Holding a microphone she must have taken from a floor runner. "Let her speak." "Grant," Mara said. Her voice boomed through the speakers. Grant froze. He looked at Mara. "Mara?" he said. "What are you doing?" "I am doing my job," Mara said. She turned to the audience. She held up a document. "My name is Mara Voss," she said. "I am an investigative journalist, and for the last 2 years, my engagement to Grant James has been an undercover investigation." The room erupted. People were standing up. Cameras were flashing. Grant released my arm. He stared at Mara like she had just stabbed him. "You are lying," he whispered. "I am not lying," Mara said. She looked at him with a pity that was more devastating than hate. "And I have the receipts." She turned to the screen. The image changed. It was no longer the invoice. It was the arbitration record, the sealed document showing North Pine paid $2 million to silence the whistleblower. "This is a sealed arbitration record," Mara said to the stunned room. "It proves that North Pine Community Foundation paid to suppress testimony regarding the Briar Vale insolvency, and the man who negotiated the payoff, the man who ensured the corruption remained buried, was Grant James." She pointed at him. "He is not a consultant," she said. "He is a cleaner, and he tried to clean his own sister because she was the only stain he couldn't scrub out." Grant looked at the audience. He saw the phones pointing at him. He saw the disgust on the faces of the people he had spent years courting. He looked at me. "You did this," he said. His voice was shaking. "You burned the whole house down." I looked him in the eye. "No, Grant," I said. "I just turned on the lights." The next hour was chaos. Reporters swarmed the stage. Security guards tried to form a perimeter, but the dam had broken. The questions were being shouted like artillery fire. "Mr. James, is it true you work for North Pine? Ms. Voss, are you saying your engagement was a sham? Ariana, are you under investigation?" Grant didn't answer. He pushed through the crowd, his head down, flanked by 2 of his junior associates who looked terrified. He disappeared out the side exit. I stayed on the stage for a moment, answering questions with Noah by my side. We controlled the narrative. We admitted the Briar Vale fault again and again, stripping it of its power. Then I saw my parents. They were standing near the exit. They looked small, shattered. My mother was clutching her purse like a shield. My father looked older than I had ever seen him. I walked down the stairs. The reporters parted for me. I stopped in front of them. "Mom," I said. "Dad." They looked at me. Then they looked at the empty door where Grant had fled. He left. My mother whispered. "He didn't even look at us. He just ran. He is scared." I said. My father looked at me. His eyes were wet. "We didn't know," he said. His voice cracked. "We knew he was ambitious. We didn't know he was cruel. You knew." "Dad," I said gently. "You just didn't want to see it." My father nodded slowly. A tear rolled down his cheek. "I am sorry. Ariana," he said. I looked at them. I wanted to hug them, but the distance between us was too vast to cross in a single day. "Do you want a ride?" I asked. "Noah has a car waiting." My mother looked toward the door again, as if expecting Grant to come back and tell them it was all a misunderstanding, but the door stayed closed. "Yes," she said softly. "Please." They turned and walked with me. They didn't walk tall. They walked like people who had just realized their entire world was built on sand. But they walked with me. We sat in the back of Noah's town car as it navigated the traffic out of the city center. Noah was on his phone, checking the fallout. "It is everywhere," Noah said. "The New York Times just picked up the wire. Siblings at war. The collapse of the North Pine facade. Boreal Business Review just issued a statement. They are suspending their relationship with North Pine pending an internal review. And Crown and Alder?" I asked. Kevin called. Noah said, "He wants to meet tomorrow. He says he admires your radical transparency." I leaned my head back against the seat. Radical transparency, that was corporate speak for surviving a near-death experience. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a text. From Grant. I opened it. It was an image, a photo of a legal complaint, drafted on the letterhead of a terrifyingly expensive law firm. Plaintiff, Grant James. Defendant, Ariana James. Cause of action, defamation, tortious interference, breach of privacy. Then a second text bubble appeared. "We can still fix this if you apologize. I can make the lawsuit go away. Just say you were unstable. Say you lied. Come back to the fold. Ari, I am the only one who can protect you from what comes next." I stared at the screen. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't defeated. He was just moving to the next phase of the assault. He didn't want the truth. He wanted submission. He wanted me to kneel so he could feel tall again. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it. I took a screenshot. "Evidence," I whispered. I looked out the window. We were passing the river. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a harsh, bright light on the city. "Where is Mara?" I asked Noah. Noah lowered his phone. "She left the venue separately." He said, "She didn't say where she was going." I pulled up my messages with Mara. There was one new message. Sent 10 minutes ago. "You were never the story I expected. Ariana, I thought I was writing a tragedy about a victim. Instead, I wrote a story about a survivor. Do not let them rewrite you. I am going dark for a while. If I stay, North Pine will bury me. I have to find a new angle. Stay safe." I called her number. "The subscriber you have called is not available." She was gone. She had blown up her life to save mine. And now she was running from the blast. I didn't know if she was protecting herself or if she was already hunting the next monster. I looked at my parents sitting silently across from me. I looked at the city passing by. The war wasn't over. Grant would sue. North Pine would attack. The investors would hesitate. My company might still fail. But for the first time in my life, the story belonged to me. I put my phone in my pocket. "Drive," I said to the driver. He pulled onto the highway, and we sped up, leaving the smoking ruins of my brother's reputation in the rearview mirror. Thank you for listening to My Brother Said His Pulitzer Fiancée Was Too Accomplished. Then she interviewed me for Forbes 30 Under. I hope you enjoyed this story of betrayal, corporate espionage, and the high price of truth. It was a journey to write Ariana's transformation from a shadow to a force of nature. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below with your city or country. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you do not miss the next episode. And please, share your thoughts in the comments. Whose side were you on? Did Grant deserve worse? Let me know. Until next time.